Right now, while you are reading these words, two machines are still talking. Not for much longer. Somewhere in the next decade, both of them will stop, and when they do, something will happen that almost nobody is preparing for. Not a malfunction, not a mistake, a closing. A window that took 49 years to open will shut, and it will not reopen for a quarter of a century, maybe longer, maybe never in the lifetime of anyone reading this sentence. This is not a story about a spacecraft dying. You already know that story. This is a story about what happens after. What happens to the data? What happens to the questions that are still open when the last signal arrives? What happens to a species that built exactly one pair of eyes capable of looking at the space between the stars and is about to lose both of them at almost the same time, with nothing built to replace them? Stay with me, because the part of this story that nobody tells you is not about 2026, it is about 2040, 2050, maybe 2060. It is about a silence that has already been scheduled and a gap in human knowledge that is being manufactured right now in real time, whether anyone is paying attention to it or not. I am your name, and this is your channel. Subscribe now, because we are about to go somewhere most science channels will not follow. Let's start with the math, because the math is brutal and it does not care about our feelings. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 are each powered by 3 radioisotope thermoelectric generators, containers of plutonium-238, that convert the heat of radioactive decay into electricity. At launch in 1977, each spacecraft had roughly 470 watts to work with. Plutonium-238 does not care about mission plans or scientific ambition. It decays on its own schedule, and that schedule removes about 4 watts of available power from each spacecraft every single year forever, with no way to slow it down and no way to stop it. Do the arithmetic. 4 watts a year, every year since 1977. That is not a maintenance problem you can engineer your way around. That is a countdown clock that started ticking before most of the people currently studying the data were born, and it has never paused, not once, not for any reason. Sometime in the early 2030s, the output from those generators will fall below the minimum threshold needed to keep even a single instrument running. And when that happens, there is no repair mission, there is no backup plan, there is no version of this story where engineers fly out and swap in a new power source. The spacecraft are between 13 and 16 billion miles away. Nothing humanity has ever built could reach them in time, and nothing currently being built is aimed at doing so. So the ending is not really in question. What is in question is what we lose when it happens, and the answer is bigger than most people realize.
Here's the thing about Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 that gets lost in the excitement about golden records and interstellar crossings. These two machines are not just historical artifacts drifting through space. Right now, in 2026, they are the only real-time scientific instruments humanity has ever operated inside the interstellar medium. Not near it, not approaching it, inside it. Physically present in the plasma and magnetic fields that exist in the space between star systems, sending back continuous measurements of an environment that no telescope on Earth, no orbiting satellite, and no theoretical model has ever been able to observe directly from the inside. Every other tool available to astrophysics is a telescope. A telescope looks. It gathers light or radio waves or other signals that traveled across vast distances and tries to reconstruct what is happening far away based on that evidence. It is powerful, but it is indirect. It is looking through a window at a storm from inside a warm house. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 are standing in the storm. They are the only instruments in human history that are not looking at interstellar space. They are sitting in it, being buffeted by it, measuring it directly as it happens around them. And what they have measured has upended model after model. The helopause turned out to be a sharp boundary instead of a gradual fade. The interstellar plasma turned out to be warmer and denser than predicted. The magnetic fields on either side of the boundary turned out to be connected rather than separate. The boundary itself turned out to leak, particles crossing in both directions in ways nothing built from Earth had anticipated. Every single one of those discoveries came from being there, physically, with an instrument at the moment it happened. None of them could have been made any other way. Which means every one of those discoveries stops the moment the power runs out. Not slows down, stops completely. And here's where the story gets genuinely uncomfortable, because there is no successor waiting in the wings. As of right now, there is no spacecraft under construction, no mission funded, no launch date scheduled that is designed to reach interstellar space and continue this work. Nothing. The concept exists on paper. Scientists at institutions including Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory have proposed something called an interstellar probe, a spacecraft specifically designed with modern instruments to travel faster than Voyager and reach the interstellar medium with a scientific payload built for exactly this kind of measurement. It exists as a concept study. It has been discussed in planning documents. It has not been approved. It has not been funded. It has not been built. And even in the most optimistic scenario where funding arrived tomorrow, a spacecraft like this would take years to design and build, and even traveling faster than Voyager, it would need decades just to reach the same boundary Voyager crossed years ago. Run the numbers forward. If Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 go silent sometime in the early 2030s, and if a replacement mission were funded this year, which it has not been, and if that mission launched within the next 5 to 10 years, which is itself optimistic for any major space agency's timeline, and if that spacecraft then traveled for another 2 to 3 decades to reach the same distance where the Voyagers currently sit, you arrive at a number somewhere between 25 and 40 years. 25 to 40 years where humanity has no instrument anywhere in the interstellar medium, no real-time data, no direct measurement, nothing but the archived readings from 2 machines that stopped transmitting years or decades earlier, frozen in time, describing conditions that may have already changed by the time anyone reads them again.
Think about what that actually means for the questions currently sitting unanswered on a scientist's desk right now. The persistent plasma emission Voyager 1 detected starting in 2017 still has 2 competing explanations, and researchers have not been able to determine which one is correct because doing so requires more data that is arriving in shrinking quantities every year as instruments are shut down to conserve power. The asymmetry between what Voyager 1 found crossing the helopause in the north and what Voyager 2 found crossing in the south still has no accepted explanation for why the boundary sat at nearly the same distance from the Sun, despite the spacecraft crossing during completely different points in the solar cycle. The shape of the heliosphere itself, whether it trails behind the Sun like a comet's tail or curves into something closer to a sphere, is still being debated using exactly 2 data points, one in each direction, collected years apart, and there is no third data point coming. These are not small, tidy academic questions destined to be resolved by a clever calculation. They are open, contested, actively debated questions that depend on data collection continuing. And the data collection is not continuing indefinitely. It has an expiration date, and that date is approaching whether or not the questions are settled first. Now, here is the part of this story that turns from frustrating into something closer to poignant, because the scientists working on this problem know all of this better than anyone. They are not naive about the gap. They've spent years trying to squeeze every possible extra month, every extra year out of 2 machines that were only ever supposed to operate for 5 years and have now been running for nearly 50. The instrument shutdown sequences were not arbitrary. Engineers sat down years in advance and mapped out, instrument by instrument, which measurements mattered most and in what order they could afford to lose them, trying to preserve the ability to answer the biggest open questions for as long as physically possible. Every instrument that gets turned off is a door that closes permanently. There is no reactivating a system once the power to run it no longer exists. Every choice made about what to shut down and when has been treated with the weight of a decision that cannot be undone. And even the desperate procedures happening right now, the so-called Big Bang power reconfiguration being tested on Voyager 2 in the hope of buying back a small amount of usable power by restructuring how electricity flows through the spacecraft's remaining systems, are fundamentally about delay, not solution. If it works, it might add a year, maybe more, to the operational life of these instruments. It does not change the outcome. Plutonium-238 does not negotiate. It will keep decaying at the same fixed rate no matter how cleverly the remaining watts are distributed. And at some point in the early 2030s, regardless of any procedure, any reconfiguration, any active engineering ingenuity, the power will fall below what any instrument needs to function, and the signal will stop. So what happens then? What actually happens to the data, the archives, the record of everything these 2 spacecraft measured across nearly 5 decades of operation? The raw data itself does not disappear. Every reading Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 have ever transmitted has been received, recorded, and archived by NASA and by the research institutions that have worked with the mission across its lifetime. That archive will persist. Scientists will continue analyzing it for years after the spacecraft goes silent, extracting new insights from old data using techniques and computational tools that did not exist when the data was first collected. In that sense, the Voyager missions do not truly end when the signal stops. They enter a different phase, one of pure analysis rather than new discovery, a phase that could genuinely last decades as researchers continue to mine 4.5 decades of interstellar measurements for answers that were not obvious the first time through. But here is the distinction that matters, the one that separates archived data from live data. An archive can answer questions about the past, it cannot answer questions about the present, and it certainly cannot answer questions about how conditions are changing over time in a region of space we will no longer have any way to observe directly. The interstellar medium is not static. It has structure, movement, regions of different density and temperature that the Sun is passing through as it orbits the center of the galaxy. What Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 measured was a snapshot, admittedly an extraordinary one stretched across nearly a decade of continuous observation, but still a snapshot of one particular region during one particular period. Once the instruments go silent, humanity loses the ability to know whether that region is changing, whether the boundary conditions are shifting, whether the Sun's protective bubble is expanding or contracting, or being reshaped by forces nobody has yet identified. The archive tells us what was true, it cannot tell us what is true after the observation stops. This matters for reasons that go beyond academic curiosity, because the heliosphere is not simply an interesting scientific subject, it is the shield that protects every living thing on this planet from the more dangerous forms of cosmic radiation that stream in from exploded stars and other violent events across the galaxy. Understanding how that shield behaves, whether it is stable or variable, whether it responds to changes in the interstellar environment in ways that could someday matter for the long-term habitability of Earth, depends on continuing to observe it. A 25-year gap in that observation is not just a gap in publishing output for astrophysics journals, it is a gap in humanity's understanding of the mechanism that keeps this planet safe, at precisely the moment when we finally started to realize that mechanism behaves in ways stranger and more complex than any model ever predicted. There's also something almost unbearably specific about the timing of this gap that deserves to be said plainly. Humanity spent decades building models of the heliosphere and the interstellar medium entirely from the outside, using telescopes and mathematics and theoretical physics without a single direct measurement from within the environment itself. Then, starting in 2012 and 2018, for the first time in the history of our species, two instruments actually arrived there and began sending back ground truth. For a brief window, a window that will have lasted less than 2 decades by the time it closes, humanity had direct, continuous, real-time access to the region of space where our solar system meets the galaxy around it. And then that window will close, and the next generation of scientists, the ones who will eventually approve and build and launch whatever spacecraft eventually replaces the Voyagers, will have to work for years, possibly decades, purely from that same 9-year snapshot of direct data, plus a much larger body of indirect Earth-based observation, exactly the situation their predecessors were in before 2012, except now armed with the knowledge of how wrong the old models turned out to be, and without a live instrument to test the new ones against. Some researchers have started using a specific phrase to describe this coming period, calling it the interstellar dark ages, not because nothing will be happening out there, but because nothing will be observed. The space between the stars will keep doing whatever it does, the plasma will keep moving, the magnetic fields will keep interacting with the edge of our solar system, and for the first time since 2012, nobody on Earth will be watching it happen. The lights, so to speak, will go out, not in interstellar space itself, but in our ability to see it directly.
And there is one more layer to this, one that is easy to miss amid the discussion of data and instruments and power budgets. When Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 stop transmitting, something else changes too. Something quieter, but in its own way just as significant. A team of engineers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a small group that has spent years, in some cases decades, developing what can only be described as a working relationship with these two machines, will lose the thing they have spent their careers tending. People who learned obsolete programming languages specifically to communicate with hardware built before they were born, who have sat through communication delays of 16, 18, 22 hours waiting to find out whether a single command worked, who have described the spacecraft not as machines but almost as colleagues, will no longer have a signal to wait for. That kind of institutional knowledge, the accumulated understanding of exactly how these two particular machines behave, what commands work, what risks to avoid, does not transfer easily to a future mission built by a different generation of engineers using different technology. When the signal stops, that knowledge does not immediately vanish, but it stops being actively exercised, and knowledge that is not actively exercised has a way of eroding, of becoming documentation instead of understanding, footnotes instead of lived expertise. So here is where this leaves us, in the summer of 2026, watching two machines running on the residual heat of decaying plutonium, watching engineers attempt an unprecedented power reconfiguration in the hope of buying a few more months or years, watching a small archive of open scientific questions accumulate faster than they can be answered, all while knowing with mathematical certainty that the clock cannot be stopped, only delayed. The gap is coming, not maybe, not possibly. It is scheduled, encoded into the physics of radioactive decay, as certain as anything in this story gets to be. The only question left is how much we manage to learn before it arrives, and how long we are willing to sit with the silence afterward, waiting for whoever eventually builds the machine that goes back out to listen again. If this is the kind of story you come here for, subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because we are going to be tracking exactly this gap as it unfolds in real time over the coming years. Drop a comment with what you think should happen next, whether you think the interstellar probe concept will ever get funded, and share this with someone who needs to understand what we are about to lose. Because right now, the signal is still coming, and when it stops, it is going to stop for a very, very long time.